Hello, everyone. This is JD Calderon, and this is Indy Comics Explained. And yet again, I brought on another fantastic group of guests. Please hit like, hit subscribe, share out the video, let everybody know we're here. And one more time, we have a Indiegogo called The Long Shots. So go check it out. It's in the show notes. Awesome. 9 books, 6 creators, $25 for 9 books. Can't get a better deal than that. All right. So there you go. Without further ado, here's our co-host.
Hey, what's up? I'm C. Michael Lanning, independent artist, done work for Arrow Comics, Zimmerman, and plus hosted a new show called Dispatches from Outside the Box on Tuesday. So check it out. Sometimes we have JD on there too, so you definitely want to check that out.
Yep. Sometimes, so that when I get to sneak in
That's
at the end. Yep, right after work. We would normally have a co-host, but that guy. I'm not even going to say anymore, but that guy. But anyway, we'll leave that guy alone. All right. Without further ado, Mr. Zim, please introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody. I'm Randy Zimmerman. I'm a longtime, alternative and independent comics producer and creator, publisher, done everything in this business that you can imagine for many years. I am currently the MC of the Zimcast that's on Wednesday night on the Raging 2 network. Sometimes JD's on there. Most of the time, C. Michael's on there. And we talk about comic news and pop media news with a bit of ranting and opinion. And then on Sundays mornings, I do the Sunday Funnies, where we try to talk about comics and funny books in a more lighthearted, whimsical fashion, the stuff that we love and the passion that we have for it. So I do that too. Plus, I'm currently working on a graphic novel. So other than that, I'm part of the Long Shots campaign that JD mentioned earlier.
Yep.
So we hope you check that out and buy in.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I'm Luke Stone. I'm a writer and artist. I do a couple things. Mostly I do a book called Hybrids, The Sons of Gods. I also do a show on Thursday mornings where we, it's general geekery and tomfoolery. That's where we try to fool guys named Tom, by the way. So, we do that on Thursday morning. That's called Nerd Bacon. And then I pop in here and there and everywhere. And that's pretty much me.
All right, cool.
Hey, it's Carlos Raphael. I'm doing well. It's Carlos Raphael, Champion Comics, publisher and writer, and I am the publisher of The Remarkables, Torvald the Viking, the Team Supremacists, American Revere, and I've been a very neglectful prick when it comes to my Coalition Comics. With this show, usually I'm pushing my Champion Comics stuff, and I'm neglectful of Coalition Comics, so I do want to put the Power Company, which is available on Indie Planet, so you can actually order these. Issue 2 was this one. That was issue 1, and here's issue 3. I thought I had the trade paperback, but somehow I don't. So, but there is a trade paperback as well with that has the first 3 issues, and that's available. And that's Coalition Comics, not Champion Comics. That's my other publishing venture.
All right, very nice, very nice. Very long resume there, Mr. Carlos.
Thank you. I try.
All right, so here you go. Here's the link if anybody's interested. Well, everybody should be interested, but here's the link. Support our voice and long shots, no fudge, just cream. We have the Oswald Chronicles, Adventure of Magic Mouse in New York. This is coming up in a week from Monday. So the 21st, I'll be launching that. Daphne's Eagle Raven, Heir of the First Unicorn, 1-4, and a prequel story. That launches tomorrow. And for even more comic-related vlogs and shows, check out Raging channel, and that's their link. So you go check that out.
So I always ask this. So these are new. So I'm able to back these now, and they're these both new Kickstarters, right? New material.
New material, brand new material.
beautiful because I got a lot of these trades and stuff, but
Mhm.
that's
No,
good.
no,
Good.
no. This stuff is brand new. All right, gentlemen, let's get into it. I saw this online and I found it interesting. This questions. I figured I'd steal it and or I'm borrowing or requisitioning or whatever. Do you agree or disagree that comic writers need artists, but artists don't need writers? Yeah, that's how I felt about it too.
Yeah.
uh,
Kind of disagree
uh,
with that.
all right. Well, Luke, you spoke up. You're first. Go for it.
Yeah. I'm happy to go first. I actually just published a tweet yesterday that has gotten a lot of action. It's in the same kind of vein as this. I made the statement that that art, though important, is not more important than the writing. That they're equally as important, and so is the lettering. That it's kind of like three legs of the same, kind of same structure, three pillars of the same structure, and without all three of those pillars working together, the structure falls. And yes, writers may need artists, but I think artists also need writers, unless you do double duty like myself and Randy tend to do. But yeah, so that's kind of my thought on that, is that both of those elements are, one's not greater than the other. They're equally as important.
Really? You should talk to those guys from the '90s called Image.
I was going to mention that. Yes.
Well, they will tell you writing is important.
And
They
you
didn't
should
sell
now.
issue twos.
And you should
They
talk
sold
to
issue
all
ones.
of the and you
Yeah.
should talk to all of the retailers that overbought a lot of them superhero books
Yeah.
at about issue 4 or 5 as well. So
Yeah.
there were a lot of quarter boxes made from retailers overestimating the power of Image.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of quarter
And it-
boxes.
They had
also
some of the
you have
best
to
artists
remember-
working on this.
The second they had the opportunity to hire Alan Moore, they did.
Yeah.
Remember that? The second
Yeah.
the opportunity.
Thank Todd McFarlane for that one.
Yep.
I remember them telling Peter David off when he told him that at least get an editor.
Mm-hmm. Oh
They
yeah.
were like,
Oh, yeah, that was a whole thing, wasn't it?
what do we need an editor for?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
that was
Well-
the whole thing.
Open your book and look. That's why you need one.
Sometimes an editor isn't needed, but if you don't know what you're doing, you definitely need that overseeing help.
Mhm.
So
Yep. So, Mr. Carlos, how do you feel about it?
Okay, so we did touch on it. This didn't exist. This question really didn't exist until 30 years ago, pretty much exactly. So Image came out, then the Peter David versus Todd McFarlane thing actually created this question. And I have to say that the writer is, now if an artist has the ability to write, then he doesn't need a writer. But if the artist doesn't have any experience writing, then the writer's the one that's really going to carry the story. The artist is going to embellish it. It's going to make it better, hopefully. And basically, the artist provides the foundation, and the writer provides the wheels. So it's, at least that's how I see it. So they're equally, and of course, in mainstream, people lean towards the artist because Image sold buco amounts, while the artist, there was Legend, which was the artist. Dark Horse came out with their Legends imprint, which was basically the writer's equivalent of Image. And aside from, I think, Hellboy, maybe possibly Next Men,
Sin
nobody remembers any of that.
that's
Next
very
one?
true. Yeah.
City. Yeah, next man in Sin City.
Yeah.
Yep.
Frank Miller.
Mhm.
But you see, the Legend line had artists that knew how to write, or at least had enough writing experience that they knew basic structure. when Image started up, those guys didn't know how to write.
Right.
And they invented the entire let's not tell a story, let's just show a pinup with a couple of panels next to it and try to move something, maybe a plot along.
Yeah.
That was the whole Image philosophy there for a couple of years until the retailers, started figuring out that they were filling quarter boxes more than their pull bags.
Yeah, but
But,
then Image started bringing in guys like Chris Claremont for
Yes.
Wildcats and Alan Moore for Supreme.
Once
and,
they learned, yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think by that time it was too late.
But that question didn't just it came to the fore with Image, but that's been going on forever, because sequential art, especially independent and alternative comics, you look at the underground movement, the majority of that was one person working all the time. And there's a large amount, not everything, just like with every genre of comics, not everything is gold. Yeah. Not everything is gold, but you still have some really classic material there by people that did everything on their own and knew how to do both jobs equally well. That the artist needs the writer as much as the writer needs the artist, and the competent sequential artist knows how to do both.
Yeah.
They
Usually.
don't need
Usually.
us.
Yes.
Usually.
But there are times I write a lot of stuff that I know I can't draw. So I hire other artists out, or that I don't have time to draw, or I don't want to take the time to do a more realistic looking style. That it's like Clint Eastwood said, man's got to know his limitations. You got to be able to go out there and hire the talent that you need in order to get the job done that you want.
And both art forms are so subjective. One person might think the art is good and the writing is garbage, and someone might feel the opposite.
That's because it's art. That's
Yeah.
the cool thing about this business. We're doing art, and there's art in writing, there's art in drawing.
Mhm. And we've come to a point where we've seen a number of artists who are, I feel, better writers than they are artists. In the case, Bill Willingham, I think he's an incredible illustrator, but I think he might be even a better writer than he is an illustrator, and he's very, very accomplished illustrator.
What about
Then
Jim
you have-
Valentino?
Jim Valentino would be another one. Jeff Lemire. Jeff Lemire, I think, is a much better writer than he is an artist. I honestly, I don't care for his artwork, but I do like his writing.
Agreed.
Matt Kint is another one. I love his writing and his artwork. I'm like, okay, if it makes you happy,
That's because they're alternative artists. To me, those guys you mentioned got their start with alternative / modern underground comics. So their style is not meant to be mainstream or
Right.
big two, since Zim doesn't like the word mainstream. That's why their art is the way it is, but because it's not meant to be big two style art, but
Right.
it works for them. People are buying it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Hold on, let me just put these up real quick. Mr. Fleming says, one for the catch up. See you guys tomorrow. See you tomorrow, Mr. Fleming.
See, Glenn was on my show earlier today. Did a great job. But he's there. He's in England, so he's 6 hours ahead of us. So
Yeah. So it's nappy time for him. So
Yeah.
as always, I appreciate your dedication for the artists and creators, JD. You're generally great. Thank you. At least there's one person that feels this way.
It's not like he's promoting his own stuff. No.
Not at all. Well, thank you. I appreciate you. Mr. Lanning, please answer the question. I don't think I gave you.
Oh, the artist is more important than the writer. That's just how it is. There you go.
We're done. Michael figured it out. We can just shut down the show here.
No, okay, but everyone plays a part. Even the letterer to the colorist plays a part, as far as that's concerned. And you can't really have one without. As far as I could tell, the artist brings the person to the book. The writer keeps the person in the book. That's the deal. And so it's the artist is kind of your advertising. The writer is kind of your substance. So you can't really have one without the other. Now, as far as the hybrid artist writer, that's fine, but the artist needs to put just as much care into learning how to write as they did in learning how to art too.
Yes.
So it can't work. Just I'm good at artists. Like you take what Todd did to Rob Liefeld. You should tell him that you want to ink your stuff. Oh, okay, I'll ink my stuff. You should tell him you want to write it. I want to write it. It's not like he was listening to Louise Simonson anyway, so they just said, sure, whatever. He was doing whatever he wanted to before on New Mutants, so. But, yeah, it's definitely a group effort. So,
No, I agree with you 110%. I mean, what's funny is the conversation got a little bit deeper to like asking, should artists do stuff on the back end or for free or whatever? And there was like that entire conversation. And I'm like, it depends. Are you splitting the property, right? Are you, are you co-owners, right? If you're co-owners, then you're both working on the book. And then that way you're not asking anybody to do anything for free. They're just working on the same property. You're both going to benefit from it, hopefully. If thing takes off, everybody's going to benefit.
right.
And then, there are ways to break up, like if you're doing a Kickstarter, how to break up payment between the writer and the artist, where the artist, gets compensated for the time a little bit more, maybe a 70-30 split as far as payment, not necessarily ownership, that sort of things. There's so many different ways you can chop it up. So I feel both parties are equally important. As being a writer, I would actually feel that way. So there you go, Mr. Actually, hold on. Before you do that, I wanted to show this to everybody. George, the Dreamer Medina, sent me this in the mail. Very nice of him.
Yeah.
It's a T-shirt for Winnie the Pooh. Yep. I think his campaign is going to come off very, very soon. I think in the next week or so.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's May.
It's May? Oh, okay.
It's going to launch in May. May 4th, I think, is when his campaign is
May
launching.
4th? Okay, well, that's good that one of us knows that.
Well, yes, because you see, he's going to be on dispatches on the 10th. So you see, see how that works.
Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. Then Entropy says, nice shirt. Thank you so much. Thank you, George. Thank you. Mr. Lanning, what do you got?
Okay, I was hoping I wouldn't have to go so early because I was hoping Rosario would be here, but since you
we're supposed to have a co-host. We're short a guest. I don't know what happened to him.
I don't know where Dwayne is. Oh, well. All right, so let me preface this with a story. I was reading Transmetropolitan the other day. Yeah.
It's a name I haven't heard in quite some time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I picked it up. It was of course for sale at the comic book shop, so I picked it up to read it. I've heard about it, and I never really read it, but I did notice something that was interesting. The sound effects in the comic, you had it where you see click on the phone or something minor, but let's say there was an exploding car you didn't have a big sound effect for. There was a slamming door and it broke all the glass and it didn't have the sound effect for it. So I kind of wonder, so how necessary are sound effects in comics, and how should we apply them?
Interesting. Mr. Raphael, you next.
Ooh, and it had to be me, huh? I would love to get in depth on this, but since I'm not a letterer on my books, and I'm not a letterer anyway, I tried that on my first book and I absolutely detest it. So that'll tell you something. So I'm really going to have to defer this to someone who might be a letterer. I think they're important, but as far as how important or where they need to be in the story, I've actually battled with that on a few times with my script, where obviously you're letting the artist know. You put the little special effect also for the letterer later on, but sometimes does it really need to be here? I'll just put it here and then I'll let the letterer make that judgment later. But if a car is exploding, I don't think you need boom, especially if it's pronounced. But if there's a phone ringing, who knows? Do you need ring ring? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and listen, there's so many people that use songs for their ringtones, right?
Exactly.
These
Yeah.
days. So how do you feel about it, Randy?
I think it's an aesthetic choice, depending upon the work and how serious the work is. Sometimes sound effects are necessary. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes if you go and you look at some of the classic Marvel material, some of those sound effects get pretty crazy or outrageous. You look at somebody like the genius of Don Martin, who did Mad Magazine in a cartoony style, and they get absolutely hilarious. You know, it's an aesthetic choice because there are times when it blends in with the art, and it's a very important part of the art and the story. Other times they're not really necessarily needed. So it's a choice between the art team or the person doing the work as to whether or not they use them. I always wanted to do a story that had corporate brands as sound effects instead of or that and also had pharmaceutical drugs as character names, because look, I every time I see a drug commercial come up, I picture what that name is in regards to their comic book history.
Trilogy.
But there's nothing like somebody getting hit with the word spam written on it. Be hilarious.
Nice. Mr. Stone, how do you feel about it, sir?
Well, comics is a storytelling medium. So story is important, like we just talked about, but so is sequential art. It's also very, very important. So are sound effects, as long as it lends to the storytelling aspect. Now, I think when you see a car explode, you kind of know what the sound of a car exploding sounds like, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you don't necessarily need to put that in there. But if someone's looking at their phone, they could either be looking at their phone or they could be dialing the phone. In order to let people know they're dialing the phone, you want that click, 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 click. So you know they're dialing something. Or beep, 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 beep.
Well,
that
they're
getting
dialing
some
an
kind
old
of-
ancient phone with they click, 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 click.
Yeah. So I think it's important. I think it's important to use sound effects sparingly, but where they're necessary. And sometimes they're aesthetic. I don't think they should ever not be aesthetic. They should always be appealing to the eye. But they're not always necessary. But as long as they're leaning and lending towards the storytelling aspect, I think they're important.
Okay, cool, fair enough. It's funny. I letter my books, but I don't ever put in like sound effects.
Effects.
Yeah, can you hear me? All right. So I never put in sound effects. I leave it all to my artists. They put them in. So they'll put in, the whatever they want to put in. They do it however they want it, which I think is cool. I think it works out very well. It's like, okay, well, because they consider that, like Luke was saying, it's part of the art. So they just say, okay, so we'll put in this smash and this boom or whatever, and they usually do that for me, which is cool. I don't ask for it; they just put it in. They feel it's important. I'm like, okay, it's important.
Or why not? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I don't believe in. Yeah, I don't believe in totalitarian rule when it comes down to working in comics. The artist wants to contribute, let him contribute, right?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Lanning, ask your own question, sir.
Oh no! Everybody gave me that was a legitimate question. I don't really think about sound effects that much. So when I saw that, it started to make me kind of think about sound effects. So it was a legitimate question. I was trying to, but I think you're right. When Carlos said the ringing phone, that makes sense. You would want to have something there. But when you see a car explosion, you're already visualizing it happening anyway while you're reading the book. So when you see a car explode, it just kind of goes for par for the course, I guess. So
Sometimes for dramatic impact, it's cool if the sound effect isn't there.
yeah,
Right.
Because you don't want it covered. You don't want it to interfere with the art.
Yep.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Mhm. Wasn't it a thing that some artists would use it so that they wouldn't have to draw so much stuff?
Yeah.
Wasn't that an excuse back in the day?
I always hate it when I see a sound effect in outer space.
Well,
That's
This
usually
is-
space filler.
scream.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Literally.
Space
That-
filler. Yeah.
that's like 30 less starships they have to draw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of work there. All right, here's one for everybody. So we all know the state of comics and the news sites that we have to go through and work with. Is there really a comic book news site that really reports the news, but I mean like actual news, not just press releases? Do any of us know of one? So that's my question. Mr. Zim, you're up.
I think the closest that you get to is IVC 2, which
Yeah, I
is
see.
created by Capital City and is made primarily for retailers to keep them abreast on what's going on. I was just over there yesterday, and they had a top 10 list of properties, and currently that are hot. And I was amazed, well, kind of depressed actually, that there were about 3 of them that I had no idea what they were. So I went down a couple of rabbit holes yesterday, but ICV2 is probably your best, because you can't go anywhere for genuine comic news, because they're either mimicking the press release that they've got, or just mimeographing, it's more like it, or they've got some sort of political spin to it. And the article comes off as pointed and, well, in some cases, bleeding cool, comes across as incredibly bitter and just angry sometimes at the entire media. So you really have to pick and choose your articles more than your sites. There are certain people that work at certain sites that are journalists or try to be journalists and try not to copy the press release exactly and actually call people and ask them for a quote or whatever, but that's incredibly rare.
Yeah.
That's in my opinion. But ICV2, I think, is about as straight up as trends and what's selling in the comic shops, and the direct market news is there, in my opinion.
Luke, you got anything to add to that?
No, I think that sums it up for real news. I think a lot of these other news, quote unquote, news outlets, they are trying to, or they think they are, producing a news site. But a lot of them are press releases and reviews and then gossip. We do get a lot of gossip that's out there. And it's sensationalized. You know, there's a sensational aspect to a lot of it. Because let's be honest, we live in a world that rewards negativity. So if there's a negative news headline, that's going to get a lot of clicks. A press release talks about something new being made is not going to be as popular as one that talks about who's getting canceled. So so I don't know that there's really any new news outlets really out there.
Mr. Raphael, what do you got?
I find it ironic that I used to love Comic Scene magazine and Wizard, because both of those, especially Comic Scene, dealt with interviewing creators and getting the news that way by going direct to the creator. I don't see that anymore, which is, again, the irony of it is that Wizard and Comic Scene and all of those magazines kind of went under because of the internet, the rise of the internet comic news format, which was up to the second versus month to month. But yet there's really nothing that's got any substance. It's like I go on Bleeding Cool, but I constantly harp on there that, oh my goodness, they've got an article that where they're actually interviewing the creator about the project. Whoa. Because otherwise it's usually rumors, it's usually reviews and previews that I really don't give a shit about, to be honest with you. I'm waiting and pick and choosing for the actual articles of news, which again is kind of rare for it being a news site.
Yeah.
Same with pretty much all of them. I'll have to check out the one that Randy mentioned, because if it's got anything dealing with actual news and interviews, that'll be awesome. Because I struggle to find websites that actually bring me in to the creative process behind the decisions that are made, and not just this is it, this is, and basically just a press release that's been rewritten.
Yeah, the days of Amazing Heroes and
Yeah, beautiful stuff.
Comic Journal was another great one, even though that was a little pointed at times, depending upon who was doing the interview. The interviewees were always amazing to read, always informative, always worth the while of picking up the magazine. You don't see that around anymore.
You don't. It's
you
like
don't.
a John Byrne interview. I used to kill for those. Byrne,
Oh, yeah.
Frank Miller, just to get that insight, and they just don't exist.
And that was back at a time where fandom was roaring and everybody was looking for every little bit of news, not dirt, not gossip, but news and information as to what was coming out. Because the informed collector was the one that was on top of the trends and was able to look for the great books that were coming. You know, Amazing Heroes used to do a year by year retrospective, and some of those I still have because it's so much fun to go back and look at the different books that had come out on different years. You know, it was like a little time capsule.
Right.
I agree.
And you don't get that online at all. Online is all everybody's so central or centered on Twitter and gossip and quick jabs and quick drama, that you're not really getting a lot of real actual news. You're getting a lot of silly opinion and he said, she said stuff, or some political BS about somebody is so-and-so and isn't following such and such because they're this or that. And the old days, remember the comic reader?
Yeah.
Little half size, almost like a pamphlet that you would pick up that would have a list of the books coming out, and that came out every other week. Because there were some great covers on that by some great people that were up and coming. That was so much fun to read. There was always a little side article or two, but a lot of it was, hey kids, this stuff's coming and it's great.
Comic Reader. I got
Comic Reader
right here. Beta Ray Bill made his first appearance. Actually, his technical first appearance was in Comic Reader.
Yeah.
But
Those were some
pretty penny.
Those are some great old news fanzines, really, is what they were. And if you see them at retailers, at your local retail shop, you should snatch them up because there's a lot of great information in there. And like I said, they're like little time capsules about the good old days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed CBG, Comic Buyer's Guide.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Used to have that come to the house. That was amazing.
Yeah. I would get my annual.
That was my subscription.
Alan Light did that, went on to work at Rolling Stone. Started that. And Terry Beatty broke his teeth on a lot of illustrative work in that CBG.
And the Thompsons.
And the Thompsons, yeah. They took over when Krause picked up the paper from Alan. But it was so much fun. It was something that personally I looked forward to. Scoured the mailbox I think it was Thursday, looking for that. And it was thick too, because there were a lot of ads in there.
Yeah.
And a lot of articles, a lot of stuff to read. And it was just a good time.
I used to take it and go, and I would take a bath. Those are in my era where I would take a bath and I would just draw a hot bath and open that CVG and read it cover to cover.
Interesting.
So much
Nice.
different than looking at 5 YouTube channels about what's hot. You could go through and look at what everybody was selling, you know, and for what, and see what prices, you know, that were being carried.
And it was in depth. There was meat to it. It wasn't just a press release on this is what's coming out. This is it.
But do you think? But do you think? Let me ask this question. At that era, you had your big guys that were, you know, you had your Jim Lees, you had your Rob Liefeld, these big guys, and Marvel and DC. I know were supposedly getting nervous at that point in time, and they're like, "All right, no more superstars." Were they starting to cut off a lot of reporting, a lot of?
Well, what you're talking about is literally 5 to 10 years after.
At least.
Right. At least. Yeah.
Not Wizard.
That's when when the
Wizard
web
murdered all those other magazines.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When the web Wizard. Anyway, not really the same as Comic Reader or Amazing Heroes. It was more flash and glitz. Hey kids, this is coming. Look at the top 10 artists. Those other guys, they're all scum. Independent comics, you know. Exactly. That's exactly how they promoted themselves. And it was, if you were working in the alternative market at the time, it was truly offensive. A lot of the stuff that they were doing, because they were holding these guys up on high pedestals, and we were looking at that going, oh, come on, he's not that good.
Right.
And the irony of it is that because I got Wizard every month, I still have their stacks of it. But my favorite part was when they would do the indie, what it was called, I think it was called Indie Edge, and it was Wizard's indie version. Man, every time I would see that, my eyes would go big, because it's like, yeah, that's where I want to live, in that indie verse, versus the big. I'm not going to make it to the big two. That's at least how my thought was. So
I was listed as on the edge once for Spank the Monkey #1. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
They said anybody who can place 2 monkeys and a female cleavage on the cover has got to be a genius. That's exactly what they said.
Nice.
Yeah. You. What's funny is you should put the quote and the T-shirt on the T-shirt. The image.
No, what we did is we did Image World Chicago. There was like their second or third one at the Rosemont. We actually finagled a table there, and we took that cover and blew it up by like 3 by 5 feet and stuck it behind us. And everybody that walked by went, hey, I recognize that cover, and they'd buy the book. I moved through like a good case of those books at that show. It was good. It was a good show. Yeah.
That's really good. Mr. Lanning, what do you have any opinions on it?
No. I haven't seen good reporting on comics in years. Obviously, I've never have. Y'all are saying Wizard came in there and destroyed everything. So.
Well, Wizard got rid of some of the periodicals, but the thing that really killed it was the net. Because when those sites first started up, when Bleeding Cool first started up, when Newsarama was running, when Comic Book Resources was running, initially they were great sites, especially for news. You'd go over Ain't It Cool News was also running at that time and would carry comic and movie news.
I remember that.
You'd go over there every day, every other day, scouring for news, and there was always news. Now it's completely different. You go over to Bleeding Cool after you take the 5 minutes that it takes to wipe out all of the freaking pop-ups on the site. You get opinion, or you get press releases that are mimicked or mimeographed. It just copied and cut and paste and thrown up there. And it's honestly, it's insulting. You get over to other sites that like to think they're journalist sites, like The Beat or Comic Book Resources Now. All of those sites quickly turned into
sensationalism.
Not just sensationalism, but bouncing boards for people trying to get into the business. Right. That's where you get your idea that and for a while Marvel and DC was running, if you give us a negative review, you're never going to work for us.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And so you got all of this. Hey kids, that's why they cut back to just what was in the news or what was in the press release. That was it. Just exactly what word for word from the press release. Because nobody wanted to give a genuine opinion for fear that they'd piss off an editor. And because
Marvel straight up said, and DC, that if you keep giving us negative press, we're not going to give you they're going to withhold their press releases.
Yeah,
And
that too.
plus, the big thing
and
is that
freebies.
yeah, and free, and they all almost to the T, they all got sold, so they were all bought out. And as soon as they got bought out, the integrity of the reporting went.
Right.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
None of it has ever seemed like it was geared to somebody who actually read comics. It always seemed like it was geared to trying to show what's the word that they like to use a lot? Look, this is just like you, so come read this, or whatever the case is. It never came off to me as being reported to me as a comic reader. It always looked like they were trying to pull others in.
Nowadays, I think a good 50 to 60% of it's virtue signaling, where the so-called writer is trying to stand on a soapbox and cry out for a cause and not really report anything real.
Right.
You know, just give them the feels.
It's become politicized a big time.
Overly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't know. There's so much BS involved.
And quite frankly, in comics journalism, there's no excuse for that.
Right.
And the people over above them should be reining them in, but a lot of those people are just patting them on the head and saying that a boy, and encouraging them to do more.
This is true. All right, let's move on. Mr. Lanning, what do you got?
Let's talk about that for a second. Okay, we're constantly told that politics has always been in comics, and we talked about it the other night. But if you did want to say something, if just like we were talking about the other night, we were talking about Twilight Zone and Rod Sterling kind of using a medium. If you wanted to say something, but you don't want to be preachy, how would you go about doing that? What would be the best way to do that?
I'll take that first. You're always going to say something. You're in an art form. You're always going to say something. It's how well you say it and how well of an artist you are to say it, that you're not beating people over the head with it. It's delivering a message and yet delivering entertainment at the same time. That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's been some incredibly great propagandic works out there in comics. I don't think you could read anything by Alan Moore and not get a point of view out of it.
True.
So, in a way, that's propaganda. He's promoting his viewpoint, but it's done skillfully well.
Mm-hmm.
That's what art's all about. It's doing it with skill. Not just slapping it together and throwing it up there.
Oh yeah, I kind of agree with them a little bit. I do disagree slightly, only in the fact that sometimes a good story can exist without giving a real message. It just kind of pulls you into a story.
Mm-hmm.
But other times I think, for the most part, I do think that as you're writing, a fraction of your worldview makes it into your writing. And whether you intend to say something or not, subconsciously you do. And so yeah, it's an agree, slightly disagree, but mostly agree.
Yeah, exactly what Luke said.
Carlos, what do you got?
What Luke said, I am the living embodiment of that, in that my American Revere Zero, there's the story takes place that there is a slightly older, weird-haired presidential candidate who is essentially evil. And he is going against a black candidate for president. But this was done, and then I've had people who have bought it, read it, and then say, man, why'd you have to bring Trump into this? And I'm like, and I laugh because I'm like, I wrote this in 2012. It got printed in 2013, 3 years before Trump, or 2 years before Trump ever declared his candidacy for president. It was just a complete coincidence. But everyone who reads it now immediately blames me for copying Trump. It's like, no, that was just I guess that's just what was going on in my head at the time that I wrote it. So it was whatever my worldview was at that time in 2012 when I put that down to pen and paper. It's just coincidence, but yeah, you're always gonna, however it works its way, your viewpoints are gonna make it onto your page. It's just whether you consciously want to make it more or you're going to want to make it more subtle.
Yep.
I'm not really, in my works, I'm not a political person. So there's, even though there's politics within my character, but it's not like, it's hard to explain. It's not like topical politics.
Right.
It's more of a broad, my politics is more of a broad thing. It's like it's a broad stroke versus more of a direct stroke.
Yeah, I get you. Instead of it's a meaning instead of people, person
Exactly.
or size.
Correct. Correct. So there's no Democrat versus Republican in mine. It's more of a way of thinking in broad strokes, or a way the world is working in a grand thing, not so much in a more of a local political nature.
I think when you go uber political, you you give your book a shelf life. You know, there for a while the talk shows were going very political. In fact, what is the guy's name? I don't even. He does the mean celebrities reading mean tweets, and he had Obama on and
Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, that's how much I care about these people. I don't take the time to learn their names. But he had Obama on, and he was reading mean tweets about him, and he read one from Donald Trump, and his statement at the end was like, "Well, at least I'll go down as a president." And I'm like, "Well, that didn't age well, did it?" You know, and it's like you look at that kind of stuff, and when people do these kind of books that are uber political to either capitalize on a market or to push an agenda, I feel like it keeps their product from being evergreen.
Yeah.
And I think those broad strokes of ideology, they hold up. Like V for Vendetta is very political, but it's not so much about one party versus another. It's about one ideology versus another, because the parties can change, but the ideology may not. And so I think when you try, you can put politics in. I'm a screw you libertarian. That's what I am. And I say screw you libertarian because I'm pretty much like all of them, like, well, screw you. So so I know that my worldview makes its way when I deal with political things. And if you're world building, it's sometimes going to be hard not to address political things. That's going to happen. But when you try to make it overtly political, to be like, oh, if you're a Republican, you're the devil, or if you're a Democrat, you're the devil, that just, it sends you down, it sends you off into a spiral of, this is going to suck. I don't even care. Like, what if it's agrees with my political viewpoint? I'm like, this is going to suck. And as soon as I see it happening in a story, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is going to be absolutely terrible. And I've bought a couple of those books just for grins and giggles, just to see how truly bad they're going to be. And they were bad. They were bad. One of these days, those comics will end up in a garage sale, and it's nothing I'll ever keep, or they'll end up in the trash. They're not worth going in my collection box. They're just not, you know. And I hate to say that because I love all comics, but yeah, I'm with you. I just don't think that being overly political is a smart thing to do in your books.
Yeah.
You know?
I think when it comes down to messaging and writing, I think a lot of people these days focus on those subjects, and I think people should just go back and worry about metaphor.
Yeah.
You understand? Not necessarily, there's ideologies or anything, but the metaphor of the story. What does that mean? What type of lesson you can take away from it? That's what Ray Bradbury would suggest to young writers. He would say, look, know your story, but what's the metaphor? What's that underlying message that runs like a through line through your story? You understand? And it doesn't have to be political. It could be anything. It could be love your mother.
Yeah.
Right?
How can the reader find themselves in one of the characters?
Exactly.
Exactly. And then
Yeah, and I think that's what people need to focus on, especially if you're a young writer, young artist, whatever. You understand? Focus on those things. You understand? Things that are universal. You understand? We all care about our parents. We all care about our children, or at least, we hope, right? But, we care about our kids. We want to do well, right? So on and so forth. You understand? I mean, there's so many different things we can touch on. And I think those are the things we should try to, focus on.
Yeah, I think if you focus on the human condition.
I leave it to, with my book, the Remarkables, and all the other ones, the President Stone Shepherd, who's evil, I never sit there and say, at no point has it ever mentioned that what party he belongs to. He's just the President of the United States. You, as the reader, can make your own decision on what party he belongs to.
And he's evil.
He's evil, so if he wanted to be an evil Democrat, beautiful, that's your place. If he wants to be an evil Republican, that's your place as the reader to put him there. I don't ever mention it in any of the books that I've ever had. Yeah. It's never mentioned who any of the party they belong to. It's just they're there as the President of the United States. You insert in with your own what party he belongs to. Yeah. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, for me, it's like, oh, he's a politician. Of course, he's evil.
There you go. And that's pretty much my whole take on it. Is he's a politician, he's evil. So that's
to willfully go into politics at that level. You have to have some kind of ulterior motive. I feel like almost, and that's. I mean, maybe I'm wrong in that, but I mean, again, it's just like, but that worldview will creep its way into my writing. It's like, oh, well, of course the politician's evil. Of course.
In that situation, you got to think too. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Right. A lot of times, these guys get in there. They want to do something. They really want to do something, but something stands in their way, so they got to make that deal. And then in order for them to make that deal, they got to make another deal, and so on and goes forth. So it's almost like if you see a young politician, don't automatically assume they're evil or anything else, because they'll get in there and politics will take over, and handoffs will take over. And if you want this done, you have to do this. You have to kiss this ring. You have to pay this toll and everything. And then eventually it corrupts you.
Well, I mentioned...
if you're not willing to compromise, you're not going to be able to get into politics on any level.
Oh, no.
And that's the problem. You can't be hardline anything because you have to compromise to get anything done.
Yeah. I had mentioned V for Vendetta. And, I mean, that book dealt with a lot of things socially in a beautiful way, masterfully. It dealt with same-sex couples and the overreach of government control, the complacency of people, and the ultimate, kind of overthrow of, kind of the rebellious spirit of the oppressed. A lot of things socially that we deal with, and it did it masterfully. It didn't have to go in with an agenda. It was great storytelling. And through that storytelling, it caused you, because the writer inserted their worldview into their writing, it caused you to examine your own worldview. And I think that's good writing. Anything that can cause you, if you have a differing view, to sit back and think, oh, well, I may not agree with it, but I feel like I understand it better now. For me, that is the thing that needs to be said. And if your writing can do that while telling a really awesome story, then that makes it even better.
Yep.
But if you can't do that while also telling a really awesome story, then don't try to do that. Just try first to tell an awesome story, is my approach.
Cool. All right, we've been a little serious, so let's lighten it up a little bit.
Absolutely.
So, I'll go with a real softball one here. So, who is your favorite sequential artist, right? And who is your favorite cover artist? Because they're not the same person, or at least they should.
Well, sometimes they are, but
Yeah, sometimes they are. That's true. But we're talking about like your absolute favorite. Like if you just see this guy, like if you hear they're going to be on a book, you're going to go buy it. So let's start with Mr. Luke. What do you got?
well, I want to say Mark Silvestri is my favorite sequential artist, but I have learned recently that he does not really do his sequential layouts. That someone else goes in and tells the story sequentially, and then he throws his beauty down. So I would. Now he used to do that, but a lot of artists get to that point to where someone else tells the story sequentially, and they do their style. They draw the art. So, so I would like to say him. There are books that he has done all the aspects of the art too, and I still think he's my favorite sequential artist. I just love the way his stuff looks. There's other people that I think tell the story visually really well, but I can't call them my favorite, so I'll leave that to other people to talk about.
Who's your
Favorite cover artist? You know what? Warts and all, I think it's Rob Liefeld. I hate to say it, but there's just something about that 90s over-the-top look that every time I see it, I'm like, dang it, it's ridiculous, but I love it. I just love it. It makes me happy down deep in my core to see it. Even that really garbage Captain America cover, I'm like, this is open up an anatomy book, friend. But man,
Yeah, but somebody already proved that was actually correct. They took and removed the shield and then put and superimposed a weightlifter in the same spot, and it actually matched up. So
yeah, he's doing a side with his arm in curl flex.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen that, but you can't see those other elements, so it doesn't really work. It just looks like a ridiculous cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't translate well. But I just love his stuff. The newer stuff is way better than the older stuff, but the older stuff makes me happier. Every time I see it, I'm like, that's ridiculous, but I love it. Yeah.
Nice.
he's improved his style, but it's because he got rid of all the cross hatching is almost all gone from his early days. So,
But some of that comes down to the inkers too.
Mhm.
That heavy cross hatching, pardon me, JD, for a second, but I'm going to go all the way back to the first question. How can we determine what's more important, the art or the story, when we can't determine which is more important, the pencil or the inker? I mean, an inker, I think about Jack Kirby, and he's had some inkers that have messed up his work that he hated working with, because he would pencil
Vince
everything.
Coletta.
Yeah, Vince Coletta is the one that came to mind. And, so I think maybe some of that over-the-top inking was par for the course with some of the inkers that worked back then. But maybe some of it's also him. Maybe he's working with better inkers now, and maybe he's not inking so much of his own stuff. Maybe. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Al Milgram's the one that comes to mind. That guy's he was the Vince Coletta after Vince Coletta. It's
Yeah.
damn.
Vince Coletta.
Nobody ever butchered Arthur Adams like Al Milgram did. It's like, wow. I remember
Vince Coletta would take these massive, elaborate scenes that Kirby had drawn, and he would take out all the detail.
He erased everything.
Yeah.
So he could do it speed because he got paid. Uh, in those days they got paid by the page, but he was the guy that Stan called in when they were behind on deadlines to basically
It would always meet
ink
the deadline.
everything. So he took many liberties to speed up the process, pissing off many artists along the way.
His purpose was twofold: do it on time and do it under budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that he did.
Never do it good, though, right?
Never do it good.
Never do it good. Just a croak. That's all. He was also used as a punishment by a few editors.
No.
For artists, no, seriously, for artists that they didn't especially care for, or that they were editing books that they didn't want to be editing or whatever, and had to deal with an art team that was a little late or got too smarmy, boom, you got done by Vince Colletta that month. Hey, there you go.
That's horrible.
The ultimate punishment.
I could hear the conversation at the dinner table now. Well, I said, how was work today? Well, I just found out Vince is going to be inking my pencils.
Yeah.
So I don't got that going for me. So
There's a great interview out there by Mike Grell, who mentions that he was told to get up on deadline if he wanted to change inkers.
Nice.
Wow.
It was that simple. And the editor at the time did not much care for him, from what I understand. So he was using Vince as punishment.
well, if you're a late penciler, maybe you need a fast and cheap inker.
Inker.
No, you need a good and fast.
Yeah, you need good at that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well,
Mr. Carlos, what do you got for the question?
So this is tough because you asked that question. You asked that question of me when we did our one-on-one, and I'm still to this day. I can't. So I'm going to say 2 instead of 1. So I'm going to go with Arthur Adams and Walt Simonson because I can't break either one up. Those are my 2 favorite sequential artists. Will always be. Whenever any of them are doing sequential art, with Walt it's rare nowadays because he's getting up there, and with Arthur it's because he's more of a cover artist nowadays than he is sequential art. But whenever anything he does is sequential, I'm going to be on top of it. I don't care what it is. Watching daisies grow, I'm buying that comic. And of course, Walt does Ragnarok, so I'm on top of that. I just bought the entire run because I had fallen behind on it. So yeah, those are going to be my 2. Of course, I'm wearing the Walt shirt. So yeah, Walt and Arthur. And cover artist, man. There's really no one that comes to mind that sticks out as a cover artist. I would have to probably go back in the vaults because nowadays none of these cover artists catch my attention. And especially these DC, I don't know if you guys have seen that DC does 2 versions of their cover art. They do the regular cover art, and then for $1 more, they put it on board, on whatever you call that, the
Cardstock?
Cardstock. And it's like most of the time I prefer the regular stock covers because the cardstock covers are just the computer stuff, the computer painted thing that still people are trying to copy Alex Ross without actually even coming close to being his talent. So I'm just going to throw Alex Ross just so I can have somebody, because I do love his work, even though it's changed a little bit lately. So I would go with Alex Ross. Nothing really comes to mind of cover artists that jump out at me.
All right, fair enough. Dwayne, I don't know, did you hear the question? Well, Dwayne, before we start, you're a little late, but you made it. I like it. So
yeah, because I think I got the times mixed up. Usually it's at 9.
introduce yourself.
All right, well, it's 7:30 Eastern time.
So introduce yourself, Dwayne.
Oh, okay. Well, hello everybody. My name is Dwayne Robinson Jr. I am the owner and creator artist of Animation Comics and Entertainment LLC, or ACE for short. Currently, I have a Kickstarter going live right now that's doing pretty good. It's called Salvation 0 and 1. It's an action horror story about the main character. His name is Vaughn, and he is a tragic character trying to find love, peace, and salvation. Hence the name of the title.
All right, cool. Now, did you hear the question?
I believe the question is favorite cover artist. No.
Well, no. It's who's your favorite sequential artist, and then who's your favorite cover artist?
Okay.
All right.
So for me right now, okay. I'm sorry.
We're asking these nice, safe questions. We had an hour of real intense, heavy questions. So.
Okay, so I missed all the juicy stuff.
You missed the heavy one.
Stuff. That's on me.
No, that's fine.
But yeah. So I right now I like David Finch. I like a lot of stuff that he's doing for DC. I'm a huge kind of detail guy, especially when it comes to inks and stuff. So yeah, David Finch is one of the guys I'm looking at heavily. That's like probably known. Indie wise, there's this guy named Mike Chrome who's really good. Man, he does like really good work. See, now I'm putting it. Now I'm trying to think even more. But yeah, those are the two right there that come to my mind. There's another guy on my friends list. I believe his name is Bongi. He's from overseas, but his work is really good too. He worked on a friend of mine's comic called man, what is it called? I forgot the name. But yeah, he's
not really a friend.
Really good artist though.
Yeah, he might not be your friend after this one, Dwayne. Sorry, man.
I'm not getting paid to promote his stuff, so you know, and he's paid me, then I'll have it ring on my lips. I show a picture.
He can live with it, right?
That just jostled something. My favorite cover artist, I'm going to go with Jason Metcalf, my boy, who did several of my own covers. And most of the time, that's what he does is cover art for indies. So I'm going to say Jason, a shout out to Jason Metcalf. There we go.
Yeah, he's good. Nitho Diaz is really good too.
Yes, he is.
He's taking a lot of my money.
Yeah.
He's taking a lot of the stone bucks around here.
Who's your favorite cover artist?
Who you ask me?
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, cover artist. I don't know. That's kind of hard too. That's really hard because there's a few that I know like indie wise. I don't really care too much about the cover artists when you think of like mainstream really, because they all kind of just like, yeah, that's cool. But there's so many, you know what I mean? Like so for me, mainstream will be a little harder. But cover artists like indie wise is the cover artist, the guy that makes the Crescent City Monsters. I think his name is Gianalo. He's really good.
Giancarlo Burnell.
Right. Yes.
The only reason I know that name so well is because I want to try to get a piece from him, but he says he's too busy.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get him sooner or later.
That's not a shock at all. But what type of piece are you looking to do? Like a cover?
Bro, what do? I do the Oswald Chronicles. That's what I want. He knows. It's all about the mouse. All right, cool. Randy, what do you got? Who's your favorite sequential artist? Who's your favorite cover artist?
Well, cover artist for me is Brian Boland. That
Yeah.
I absolutely hate The Killing Joke. I think it's the worst thing that Moore has ever written, and I think he said so himself. But that cover is iconic. The series of Wonder Woman covers that he did also just as iconic and just beautiful work. And it's a shame he doesn't do more sequential work because he's a good sequential artist, but he's a great cover artist. There's also somebody else I found while I was running down a number of rabbit holes, and I don't know if he's a cover artist or not, but he should be. Someone named Derek Chu.
Derek Chu.
If you've never seen his stuff,
Doesn't ring a bell.
let me share my screen here.
Does he work for DC?
I have no idea.
Jay Lee.
The majority of the pictures that I've seen of his are DC.
Yeah, I think he worked. Yeah, I think Luke just said it. I think he works with Jim Lee.
Jay Lee.
I think I've
No,
seen
Jay
Jay
Lee,
Lee.
the artist,
Oh,
does great
sorry.
covers.
Does phenomenal
I've heard of
stuff.
him
If you can
before.
share that,
J.G. Jones. I forgot J.G. Jones.
if you can share that the
Ooh.
Photoshop
Oh
there,
yeah, this guy.
look at that. That
Oh,
is
yeah.
just incredible.
Mhm.
Beautiful style. There's a Batgirl and a Impulse as well that I saved because it just amazes me. He's not afraid to stretch his anatomy, and yet he's almost got a realistic paint style to his work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just
Sci-fi
that's
cover.
comics to me. That is comics, and I think I just admire his work. It's great. It's phenomenal. When you talk about sequential artists, it would tie back down to here. Let me get back here. It would get back down to the classics, probably Eisner and Jack Cole, especially Jack Cole's run on Plastic Man is just phenomenal sequentials and genius when it comes to guiding the eye. Art Spiegelman did an article on Jack Cole in the New Yorker where he points out that Cole's composition when he was working on Plastic Man was just solid genius. This guy was bored out of his mind, so doing funny book work. So he was using Plastic Man to literally guide the composition and to send your eye left to right, up to down. And he dissected a couple of his pages that were just amazing. It's something that I had never considered before, but when you get into his work, it just comes across as solid genius. Just beautiful stuff. And Eisner because he's Eisner, and nobody matches that Spirit run. 7 pages every day, or not every day, but every week on a consistent basis, especially once he came back from the war. Even though he did have a couple of assistants working with him, working that hectic, he'd have to. But it's still incredible classic work. And also somebody that wrote and drew at the same time. So
Gotcha.
Just
Mr.
amazing
Lanning,
stuff.
what do you got?
Let's see. As far as sequential is concerned, I would go with Jorge Corona. Does Middle West, feathers, things like that. And the thing about his art is, though he doesn't break out of your panels, like you see somebody come out with a collage of panels, which I do like that. But he's able to. He caught my attention by just it was panels, but working inside those panels is really interesting. So yeah, I'll have to go with him. Cover artist. It was going to be Art Adams, but everybody decided to say that. So maybe Humberto Ramos, but it's really hard for me because I hate that word favorites because it's so restricting to me, and I can't, my favorite will change every week. It depends. I guess I'm just a favorite whore or something. I don't know.
It depends on the piece I see this week.
Exactly. Like, oh, well, now you're my favorite artist. Congratulations.
But that's kind of good though. You get inspired like every week.
Yeah.
Mhm. No, I feel. I mean, for myself, I mean, I'm really torn, right? Because two of my favorites, it's like, is it just two? It's probably like half a dozen, right? So for me, it's Mark Buckingham, right? From Fables.
Oh yeah.
But I also have to throw in George Perez.
Oh, yeah.
George Perez is one of my favorite interior artists that's ever existed. But he's also one of my favorite cover artists. Along with Adam Hughes.
Yeah, Adam Hughes.
I mean, and the thing is, with Adam Hughes, you think about him as the good girl artist, but it's really interesting when you see him do something outside of that. I've seen him do a bunch of covers where it's not good girl art. It's like something totally different. He did one, I think, for one of the Fables books. He did like a shoe and it had like a car and all this stuff, and it had nothing to do with like good girl. And it was just looked incredible. Just the way his composition was just incredible. So hold on, let me put up a couple of these real quick. Hey everybody, looking to see some noise streams. Anyone know where I can find the link? Right, I think it's because we have all the porn links come up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find that guy one day. Favorite whore. There you go, Mr. Lanning.
Yeah. I knew that was coming.
But yeah, I think for myself, it's definitely Mark Buckingham from Fables. and a lot of other places. And Adam Hughes for the covers, and George Perez as in the mix. And Arthur Adams, obviously, but Art just, he just does his covers. I just think he's wasted at Marvel. That's all. I'm tired of seeing. I'm tired of seeing him at Marvel. It's like, God, go do some fantasy work somewhere.
It's just because he's got his family, and he makes something like 20,000. He gets 20,000 per cover.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the case may be. I mean, I understand the guy got to eat. You got to do what you got to do.
Right.
But
That's way more than any sequential. He can do 22 pages and not get paid that much. So, as long as they keep paying that much for covers, he's going to keep coming back. Same thing with Alex Ross. Alex Ross could do interiors. We've seen it, but as long as they keep paying him that outrageous amount of money to do covers, he's just going to keep doing covers.
There you go. All right, Mr. Lanning, what do you got, sir? You're up.
All right. So, like, I had this other question. I only had 2 questions for tonight. Somebody was supposed to be here to ask them, but
Well,
yeah.
like I said, you can't trust Postman.
I'm beginning to feel like every time I come on, he's not here. I'm beginning to take that kind of personally. But anyway, so what is the one thing you hope people take away from your IP, your creation, whether it's a story, your art? What's the one thing that you hope people take away?
All right. Mr. Raphael, you're up.
I would hope that they get a spirit of that I enjoy what I do, and that they get a spirit of the old style, the way comics were done in the 70s and 80s, because that's really the spirit of where that's where I grew up. I grew up. I'm aging myself, but I grew up in the 70s and 80s with comic reading and collecting. So it's where my zone is, and my Kickstarters, it's there. I say it. I'm making comics fun again, and and the inspiration are those comics like Justice League, X-Men, those comics from that era. And so hopefully when they read that, they get that spirit out of it and want more.
Cool. Dwayne, what do you got?
For me, I would say that I would want people to get things from me where, just different in all aspects, like, whether it be just the story or maybe the protagonist or an antagonist, just all over. I just wanted to make stories that are really kind of different, things that you haven't really seen before. Not necessarily that's even in comic books, that's just in movies, TV shows. It's just in the comic book format. But I would, because I like to take stories and kind of think of like, okay, well, how can I make this different? What makes it stand out? You know what I mean? I mean, my art is the thing that always catches people's eyes first and foremost, of course. But when they pick the book up and they read it, whether it be just the style of it, like for instance, my Nightfall story starts, half of it is in black and white, and it slowly goes into color. Not too many comics really have that as the main format. I'm sure there are. I'm not saying that there isn't, but not too many that I've seen. Or having a story where the main character is already saved the world, and it talks about what happens after that. Like, what happens after he saves the world? Does he deal with, like, this is like just happy and joy, or is there a lot of pain that he has to deal with because of some of the things that happen while saving the world? Or even the superhero stories that I have. Every story that I write or just do the artwork for, my brother writes it. You always sit down and say, okay, well, how can we flip the script on this? What can we make the story different? How can we amplify it and just turn a regular genre like horror into something totally different, and put our own little take on it. And so that's kind of what I want people to take from my story, is that there's definitely going to be a lot of creativity and a lot of thought process into it. And we want you to really leave thinking, man, this was kind of different. I like that. I'm interested in what's good, what else they're gonna make, what genre.
Cool. Mr. Zim, what do you have?
Well, first and foremost, I want people to be entertained. I want them to lose themselves, and because that's what comics were to me, especially growing up. They were my um, lifesaver, pretty much. That I leaned on quite a bit. And there are a lot of different. I've done a lot of different stories with a lot of different intents for a lot of different reasons. Beyond that, but that's really the main focus is just to entertain people.
Cool. Mr. Stone.
I really would like people to connect with the characters, fall in love with them, and have a favorite character. You know that they they get invested in the story, and they care what's happening in these people's lives. That's really where I want, like I did with the Claremont era X-Men. I cared about Wolverine. I think that's that's why people fight so hard for their characters now, when they feel like a new writer or a new generation screwing them up. They fight so hard for them because they connected to that character. It's like, it's not just Wolverine, it's my Wolverine. It's not just Batman, it's my Batman. I want people to feel that way about these characters. And
Yeah.
I I tweeted last night, I said, I've come to the realization that I make my books just as much for everyone else as I do for myself. And that's what I want. I want them to fall in love with the characters.
All right, cool. For myself, I like to offer escapism because for growing up the way I did, that's what it was for me. It was a way to escape, right? That place that I was in. You understand? So that's what I like to impart on other people, to take them to a completely different world, to see something completely different, something magical, mystical, mysterious, someplace that you can lose yourself for a while, and then come back, and just like experience that through the characters, through the story, through the world, the artwork, so on and so forth. So that's what I like to impart to everybody as far as that's concerned. Mhm. So, Mr. Lanning, what do you got for you on that?
Oh man, I got to answer this question.
Yes, sir.
No, everything you said. But I'd also like to inspire imagination.
Mhm.
The children are our future, and no, I'm trying to be smart.
Are they really though?
Yeah, not doing a good job of it. But no, I'd like it to inspire imagination to where you're at this step. I show you this, right? We do this, but you take that, and that is your basis to go further than I did. That kind of, to bring out more, to start here, and move out. So.
All right, hold on. I got a couple of these. I don't know what this means. It's not real, Daphne. Don't block me. And then teach them well and let them lead the way.
Exactly.
Tell them
There you go.
Tiffany did not miss a beat.
That's right. All right, Tiffany, you and I, right?
There you go. You saved Mr. Lanning. Thank you, Tiffany.
There you go.
All right. So okay. So who was your greatest teacher in comics? Right? So who's the person that you looked at, studied the most, learned the most from? Who would you consider that person to be in comics? And I think we're up to Mr. Dwayne.
See, that's a very kind of difficult question for me because, like, I my story, way how I got into comics is very different from probably all of you guys, So I kind of started super late, but man.
But who's the person that influenced you the most? Like, who was that person? You had to read a comic at some point.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Who was that comic that you looked at? You were like, God, this is it.
Well, I would say writing wise, Dwayne Mcduffie.
Okay.
And it was crazy
There you
because
go.
here's the thing, like I knew so much of his stuff, right? But I never looked at the credits when I was younger. I just, this is cool. This is cool. I like this. I like that. That's a nice story. And then as I got older and I really started to kind of like do my, history on comics, and my brother was telling me a lot of stuff on it, I realized a lot of the stuff that he wrote he had something to do with, or I enjoyed, like Justice League or All-Star Superman, Static, all of the characters from Milestone, so many other things, and that was like what really kind of inspired me, because I was like, man, this one guy is doing so much. It wasn't about color or anything like that. It was just the fact that he was writing all these things that I enjoyed, you know what I mean? And the fact that it was one person that was always there. He was the one constant. So for me, Dwayne Mcduffie, that really kind of just got the ball rolling for me. I was like, okay, let me try to write stories like this, that have this kind of like emotional ties to the characters. They're not just like superhero stories. They're things that you can relate to. People, especially the Milestone characters, they're characters that, you really can relate to because of where they started out, their origin and things of that nature. So for him, so definitely for him is the first one that comes to mind. And I found out he's fellow Dwayne, so I was like, yeah, all right. Represent for Dwayne. Let's do this. I'm the next one up. I got it. I'll take it from here. I'm joking, but yeah, that he's definitely like the first one that comes to mind, just because of that, just because of his wide range of being able to create stories. I even found out that he did Ben 10. I didn't even know that, and I was like, he did Ben 10 too. I was like, what didn't he do? You know what I mean? So like, he just really inspired me, and like I said, because the stories were so different, he took characters that everybody knew, whether it be Batman, Superman, whatever, and he just made them really relatable to me, and so yeah.
Cool. Let me flip a couple of these real quick. Tiffany, anytime I'm here to become more creative like you all, and she also puts up, I've been indulging in comics since Transformers. Was He-Man a comic? It didn't start off as one. It started off as a toy line that they made a cartoon for, and then eventually ended up as a comic book.
Yeah,
it did have a little comic inside it though, in the first figures, where he had axe instead of the sword.
Yep.
So
There's a great issue of DC Comics Presents that has He-Man and Superman in it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's real recent.
That's worth you digging up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, unlike the Transformers, which started off as a toy line, where they gave it to Marvel and they turned it into a comic book, and eventually gave birth to that toy line, giving them names and personalities and all that jazz. So.
Yeah. Same thing with Rom Space Knight.
Right. Rom
started out. That's why he looks as blocky as he does. He started out as a toy.
Yep. Micronauts.
Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. G.I. Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
probably
the new iteration, because the original, right? There's that one, which but the little guys.
Yeah, they did a cartoon.
But they were still weren't they
comic
created by Larry Hama? I think Larry did that work. Yeah.
Yeah, he did that as a comic book. Yeah, he was working for Marvel.
No, I mean, didn't he create the line for Hasbro?
Yeah.
Because it was kind of looked at as a multi-platform idea to start with. Yeah.
Oh, who was it that helped him? Is it Jose Delbo, or was that Transformers? I can't remember who Larry had. There was the guy who would design the actual art as an artist. Hama came up with the names and the personalities, but the actual designs were another well-known comic artist, but I can't remember. It's not coming off the top of my head right now.
Probably on their Wikipedia page if somebody wants to run over there and take a look.
Yeah, and the Transformers guy, like I never remember his name, but like they just threw the project at him. They're like, "Do you want this?" Because nobody else wants it. He did it. He came up with all the names and everything, so it's hilarious. Mr. Oh, hold on. Let me put this up real quick. I was just thinking the same G.I. Joe. Yes. So Randy, what do you got? Who was your biggest teacher in comics?
Well, there's been a lot. I've read a lot of comics. Eisner, I ran across the Spirit magazine from Warren very early on and was enamored by the storytelling and the sequential work. Dave Cockrum's Giant Size X-Men #1, I tore to shreds, studying literally into the pages just fell apart from the binding. I had to go out and buy another copy because it was so beat up, and I was really mad I picked it up at Motor City Con, had to pay a whole $8 for it. I was really upset when I had to buy it. But there's so many other people. Manhunter by Simonson and Goodwin, I sit and look at in awe at least once a year or so, just to see because that was Simonson just coming in, just cutting his teeth and figuring out what sequential art is. But it's such a masterful piece of work. You just sit there in awe of it, of the entire production. Because he was like Eisner too. He was telling stories in short chunks there for a while, and then told a couple of longer stories towards the end. And the final story that's in the final DC versions after Goodwin had passed, they had already agreed on one more Manhunter story that Simonson actually he plotted it off of the plot that he had with Goodwin, but it had no dialogue in it out of respect for Archie. And it was just an amazing piece of work that put the icing on the cake of the whole story. Just amazing work. And his Aliens adaptation also, I've almost torn into shreds looking at it, that Heavy Metal printed, because it was so greatly done. Other than that, it's folks and spots, because I don't think an artist is always on.
Right.
That there's points in time, like we've discussed on the Zimcast before. Some guys are just right there on certain projects and right off on certain other ones. And so you see this and you learn from it, and then you see the bad and you learn from that too. But Simonson and Eisner for me, Jack Cole especially in the but there wasn't a whole lot of pure Jack Cole out there to really look at and study. But there's a lot of other artists going through, and writers too, on the same aspect that you look at for writing points. And it's all art. Again, it's subjective. Sometimes they're dead on, sometimes they're not. I hated Kirby growing up in the 70s, especially as a cover artist. Used to drive me crazy. Could never enjoy his style until much later on. But his New Gods material, his Fourth World work, is just pure imagination and just pure wonder. And you sit there in awe of that, no matter how blocky you think it might look. You go into it later, after I've had a chance to do cartooning classes with kids and that, and I sat down and looked at those 70s covers again and realized he was doing those really quick. And it's all basic shapes. It's circle, circle, square, square, square. And it's just phenomenal work. And especially when you look at some of these covers are amazing in compositional sense that Kirby had already had down as reflex. And I'm sure he was kicking out probably 3 or 4 covers a day and just getting them done. Oh, you need a cover for Invaders? Here you go. And it's literally a thing of beauty composition wise when you sit and look at it. Just beautiful stuff. But yeah, you learn from everything that you see. That's all part of being an artist. But Eisner, Simonson, Kirby, Cole, that's, you look at Alex Toth and how he strips everything down to just black and white and bare bone compositions, just amazing. You look at C.C. Beck, because you learn that C.C. Beck's style was literally intended for comics, because he felt comics needed to be wide open spaces with wide splashes of color, of solid color. That's why Captain Marvel looks the way that it does and is as simplistic looking as it is. It's just amazing to sit there and look at people. Jim Aparo, who did Brave and the Bold for years. I could go on for a long, long time about people that you can look at. And Alex Nino and his inking ability, his ability to lay down splotches that turn into beautiful pieces of work. Just phenomenal stuff. So, yeah, just read comics, I guess.
Yeah. It is hard. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes from Neil Adams, talking to a young artist. I forgot the quote exactly, but just a paraphrase. Like, the artist was like, "Oh, he was talking about Jack Kirby, and he was like, "Oh, that's not that great." And he said, "Oh, really?" He says, "Try to draw a character or a figure with that much power in that illustration. Try it, and tell me you can do it, because you can't. You can't match Jack for what he did."
Well, there's so much of Kirby that you can, and again, real simplistic stuff, but so dead on. There's so much of Kirby that's iconic. You mentioned the Commandy #1 cover, you automatically see it in your head. You mentioned Demon #1 cover, you see it in your head. Eternals #1 cover, you see it right in your head. It's right there. And you go and you look at it, and the joy, the complexity is in the composition a lot more than the rendering. It's just amazing work.
Mr. Luke, what do you got?
Well, for writing, obviously, I gotta for world building, Stan Lee. He just inspired me to create things that were expansive story-wise. I would also have to say Chris Claremont of the 90s. Just character development was tremendous there. And then for art, well, I'm going to add one more writer, Frank Miller. Not all of his stuff, but some of it really spoke to me. Especially some of his Batman work was just I just thought was masterful.
I thought Daredevil 168, I think the number is, where the introduction of Elektra was just incredible.
Oh, great.
Just classic stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so some of his stuff has really inspired me. As far as artists goes, I have to mention Mike Zack. His run of Secret Wars made me fall in love with comic books.
Nice.
Jack Kirby, for all the reasons. Zim mentioned Jack Kirby. It was that his speed, his composition, and his excitement and imagination on the page just was bar none. And I'm going to mention Todd McFarlane. I do like his art, but his inspiration is not for his art or his writing. It's for his scope of understanding that the comic book medium can go much further than a printed page. He had the vision of doing a movie, doing animation, doing toys, just that kind of foresight for an IP has been inspiring, and it's part of where I get my drive to turn my silly little characters into an entire world that you can play in and spend time with. So those would be my inspirations and people I've learned from. I would also have to say Hard Knocks. Hard Knocks has been one hell of a teacher.
Hell of an artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool. Carlos, you didn't add. I went. Yeah, Carlos, what do you got?
No. All right. So just to quickly add with Todd, that's because he originally, when he retired from comics, he was actually wanting to do cards and toys. So before he ever decided he was going to do Spawn, he was trying to launch his own card line. So trading cards. So and it was kind of like, once that didn't go through, then he was like, all right, then I better go back to comics and come out with Spawn, which he did, and then the rest is history. As far as my inspirations, my teachers, the first one would be Stan, even though that comes with an asterisk, because I'm at the age where he had already retired by the time I started reading comics. So my first real teacher, the first introduction would be Len Wein, and his Hulk, and Steve Gerber with the horror line in the 70s, as I started reading comics in the mid 70s. So but of course Stan Lee, I didn't pick up Spider-Man immediately then. My Spider-Man was picking up what was called Marvel Tales, and it reprinted all those old Spider-Mans, the early Spider-Mans with Steve Ditko and Stan Lee. So that's where Stan's kind of gets slotted in, is as I started reading Marvel Tales. In the 80s, you're going to... Chris Claremont, without a doubt, there is no other. The way he built that entire world of the X-Men just had me mesmerized from issue 167, technically 166, but my brother owned that one. I just stole it from him. But it started with 167 and worked its way through the ages. So Chris Claremont, then Ann Nesenti and her Daredevil run, where I really was paying attention to the dialogue and story, would be Anne, and then of course, let me see, in the 90s, probably Mike Mignola with his Hellboy. That whole, I absolutely love the Hellboy universe. So, and BPM. So yes, that would be my 90s, and then today would be Scott Snyder, who's actually my instructor for comic writing. So I've learned a lot from him since I started taking his class.
All right, cool. Mr. Lanning, who are you learning from, sir?
Well, it's kind of like Zim said. It really comes from all over the place. I would say Eisner, as far as instructional, his books and everything help. As far as going back, looking at art and panels, I'd have to kind of go like maybe Sam Keith and Chris Bocciolo. Sam Keith for there's the Max, but his Sandman, Sandman #1, Sam Keith, and then Bocciolo's Steampunk. The way he deals with a lot of darks. I don't know how he deals with so many darks, but he deals with a lot of darks in there, which I always find myself going back and looking at it, just how that, trying to study how he does that. But that's one thing I'd like to incorporate. But I thought of somebody else. Writing wise, so Dennis O'Neill. Just the way that I think he introduced it to me. I don't think it's his structure as far as writing comics, where you had plot A, plot B, plot C. You had plot A would take over the book, but plot B would happen in the background, and it would be something that goes into the next book, and then so on and so forth. So I would look at that for, and I cannot remember what that formula is called. Somebody said it. I've talked about it before, and somebody said it. But yeah, Video Deal as far as writing, Bocciolo, Keith, art, and instructionally speaking, Eisner, and maybe Scott McCloud. Scott McCloud. I wasn't really wild about his understanding comics and making comics. I read them. I think they help. So I'm going to have to give a shout out to it. So it's Scott McCloud. So.
All right, cool. For myself, it would have to be like Frank Miller, Matt Wagner, Dave Sim, Alan Moore, James DeMatteis, probably Walter Simon.
JM, man, thank you for reminding me. JM's huge in my world, and Keith Giffen.
Yeah, and probably Roy Thomas I could throw in there.
Roy Thomas. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God! You see, there's just too much. If you
there's tons of guys. I mean, that's the craziest thing about it.
Yep.
Kane. Yeah. Nobody minimized the Max. Golly.
You're gonna be hearing about that one for a minute.
I'm sure.
We'll minimize the Max. There you go. But there's so many heads out there that's just to learn from, because I love Matt Wagner when he would get into his experimental phase and he would just start doing weird things with panel layouts and design, and it's just like, what the hell is that? And it's just like, and you're trying to incorporate that into your own work when you see, you're like, okay, how do I do that? How can I move it around? That sort of thing. Same thing with Dave Sim. That's why I love Dave Sim. You just see all the stuff he was doing is just nuts. And how he incorporated, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, was lettering and word balloons, and just the way he moved those things to the pages. It's sometimes crazy.
Yeah.
Mage. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's primarily Grendel.
Yeah.
That's why I like most of.
I never got into it. To me, Mage. My brother's the one who actually got into. He got the Mage first, and then let me read them, and it's just that whole story sucked me in. Um, Grendel, for some reason, I own the books, but I never really got much into it.
Mm, gotcha. Well, I mean, listen. Oh, what is it? I think that's one for Mr. Lanning.
Yeah, I don't know why she's going to sleep on the couch, but okay.
Oh, nice, nice. I like it. I like it. All right. So, Mr. Lanning, you got another question for the panel?
Oh, golly, I'd have to think of one.
If you want, I got one. I got one. I got one. Actually, I have one. I actually do want to ask. Because here's the thing. I would like to. Here's the question. Just because you have two parts, I want you to say mainstream or indie, right? Well, actually, I would like one of each. So if you could get a hold of a property that you would like to do, right? Let's say just create a comic book, and if you get a hold of a property, what would it be, right? So it's like, if you could give me one indie, one mainstream, or if you just want to do the indie, or vice. Well, if you're gonna do a mainstream, I definitely want an indie out of you. But if you just want to do an indie, that's fine. So, Randy, what do you got?
Oh, don't put me on the spot for something like this. Well, for mainstream, if you have to use that expression, I would do Killraven for Marvel. I was always up for the underdog or the second banana type characters anyway. But Killraven, I wouldn't mind doing. Independent, there's so many of them that I enjoy, but they're all personal visions of, or points of view that I wouldn't want to go in there and try to mess it up. Pardon me, mess it up by doing it. If I was offered something, one of the Image characters, I would probably do it just to do it. But to sit here and independently go and I wrote The Realm for a while, which is like Dungeons and Dragons, and I wish I had written a lot more of it. You'd have to go in and again, the majority of the independents to me are personal visions that I don't want to walk on or wouldn't want to walk over. But mainstream stuff, yeah, give me Killraven, give me Doctor Strange would be fun. Give me Ironwood from DC. That's a fantasy book about ships floating in space. I think that had a big influence on me when I was a kid. What? Iron Wolf.
Because I remember
not Ironwood. Ironwood was an adult property. Yeah, wouldn't mind writing that one either. But that's a whole different thing. Whole different property. Iron Wolf. You're right. Yes. Yeah. But so I'm more along that line. I would write Conan. I would write Shadow. If I was given an opportunity to write a Grendel story, I would definitely pitch something to Matt Wagner because I admire the work that has been Grendel and what he's done. So yeah, but Shadow, I would definitely write. Doc Savage, I would love to do, but I wouldn't be able to do it justice.
No, I'd buy you Shadow in a heartbeat.
Oh, I think Shadow would be killer to do. It'd be a lot of fun. The Spider, I would love to do. The old pulp character that is kind of like the Shadow that was around in the 30s. Again, that would be a lot of fun to write. But other characters, mainline superhero type characters, don't interest me a whole lot. Bob Schreck, when he was Batman editor, told me I could write a Batman story for him and he'd work with me. And I told him, I think, and this was back in 2002, 2003. I told him at the time, I thought every Batman story had been told and everything's just rehashing from the obvious. Even though, there's been some great Batman stories since then. The property I pitched to him was something that he would be in control over, would be Man-Bat and the Outsiders. I wouldn't mind writing that, with Man-Bat leading another group of secondary oddball characters.
That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
That would have been cool.
Oh, well, he had me write it up as a proposal so that because he asked me who would be on the team. And he said that's who was editor at the time. It wasn't Harris. It was somebody else. The guy that Harris replaced. Oh, what was the guy's name? I'm brain farting on his name. Anyway, he said that was I listed a bunch of characters. He said, that's every character this guy, my boss, absolutely hates. So if you get any free time, I can guarantee you it'll never see the light of day, but send me a proposal. And I'll tell you what I'll do with it. When I'm really pissed at the guy, I'm going to run in, plop it on his desk and tell him that's the next hot book that I'm doing. No questions asked. And I'm going to run. and I'm going to listen to him yell all the way down the hall because it was ideal. Because he had already put out a mandatory don't use these characters because I was using Ambush Bug, Vixen, Creeper, Metamorpho. And at the time that I was pitching this to him, this was at San Diego Con, so I was popping stuff off the top of my head. But they all had mental problems. So the whole tagline for the group was, we're not a superhero team, we're a group therapy session.
Nice.
Ambush
Oh, wow.
Bug, Metamorpho. Those are some of my favorites.
Ambush Bug was the transportation for the team because as soon as he found out he was a member of a team, he just took to it like a fish out of water. So whenever there was a problem, he would pop up in front of somebody and go, time for team business, and he'd hug them and they'd both disappear.
Nice.
And he'd be able to collect the entire team. The whole team was brought together by Phantom Stranger that told everybody that you're pretty much that you're all kind of messed up in the head, but if you all got together and worked together, you could probably save the world.
He's in Suicide Squad right now.
Phantom Stranger or Suicide
No,
or Ambush Bug?
Ambush Bug.
Yeah,
He's
I
kind
can see him being used.
Yeah, he's kind of does the whole fourth wall breaking Deadpool type of
Yeah.
thing. So
He
it's
was always that
actually
kind of
kinda
character.
entertaining.
He always did that kind of
Entertaining.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
His Ambush Bug, the Keith Giffen Ambush Bugs, again,
Yeah.
classic stuff. You just little hidden classics that you can't you can't do better than, you know. You
And
just
the
can't.
Toy Wonder.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's what I wondered.
Luke,
Well,
So anyway, the end of that story. Sorry, Luke. The end of
Sorry.
that story was this was back during the CompuServe days. This is how long ago it was. I seem to remember I was on CompuServe. He sent me an email one time that was an entire paragraph of thank yous, and then the bottom line was, "Don't show up at the DC offices for at least the next 2 weeks, because what was the guy's name? Curtis? Not Curtis. I don't. He was the big wig at DC at the time. We'll definitely remember your name," is what he said.
nice.
That was the biggest compliment I could ever have. Yeah.
So Luke, what would you like to take on?
for art or writing?
It doesn't matter.
Whatever.
I mean,
All right.
you make a distinction yourself.
Okay, so if it's writing, I would like to take on mainstream defenders.
Okay, cool.
I've always thought that concept of the kind of the B team heroes was interesting to me.
Oh, you're talking Luke Cage,
Yeah.
Daredevil, those
Okay.
defenders? Yeah.
Well, I mean, like we're talking, the screw ups defenders,
Yeah.
Right.
not the good ones, the screw up ones.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s and 90s. Those guys, I like the idea of those. I'd love to write that. Art-wise, it would be a dream to do Swamp Thing. I love Swamp Thing. Independent, Ninja Turtles, art and story. That would be a dream come true.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, Charles, good one.
Carlos, what do you got?
So for mainstream, it would again, we talked about this before. It would be Hawkman but it would have to be done Hawkman with Jason Metcalf. I wouldn't do it without him doing it because it's one of his favorites. When we were young punks growing up, we would sit there and always talk about, man, if we got the chance, that would be to collaborate with the Hawkman. Plus, there's a lot of richness to it, but then there's a lot that hasn't been tackled yet that we could go into. So Hawkman. The other one would be Captain Marvel Shazam. I would definitely love to do that. And then lastly, for mainstream, it would be Dr. Fate. Because again, just so much in so many different directions that you can go in with that. And it would have to be Kent Nelson's version of Dr. Fate, but I would love to do that. For indies, I would probably say I would love to do the Max. I would love to do Hellboy. So Hellboy, Max, and probably Walking Dead or The Pit would be my down the list, but still something that I wouldn't mind jumping into those worlds for the indies.
All right, cool. Dwayne, what do you got?
I have a few. So Icon from Milestone Comics,
Nice.
Batman Beyond, Wonder Woman. There was another one I can't remember. Oh, and Spawn. I would probably like to do my own version of Spawn. Artwork as well too, but really writing. Indie, that's kind of hard. So that's kind of hard.
Technically.
Yeah, technically Spawn's Indy. So.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Spawn's indie, so you got that covered.
Yeah, so we'll leave it at that then. We'll keep it at that then. So we'll do it.
All right, cool. Mr. Lanning, what do you got?
From mainstream, and this would be writing, maybe even art for that matter. But I've always had a story for it because I don't think they've ever done Raven right.
Aha.
Never. You're talking about a character that's, Trigon's her father and everything. I think there's a lot that she could deal with there emotionally that they just haven't written her right.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe in the past, but now the solo books, no. But Raven from mainstream. As far as indies would go, I wouldn't mind doing a run on Rat Queens.
Rat Queen? Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's a fun book, and Wiseby branches out to where he has different writers and artists come in to do that. So yeah, I think Rat Queens would be pretty cool to do.
All right, cool. For myself, I would like to do Captain Marvel or
Which one? Which one?
the current iteration. Yeah.
The
Which
female
one?
Captain Marvel?
Shazam or the
Carol
Marvel
Danvers.
version?
No, Carol Danvers. I'd like to do Carol Danvers. Yeah. I would really, really want to do that character. I think I could do something fun with her. Another one would be, if we're talking about modern day Marvel, Riri Williams. I think I could do something interesting with that character. But if we're talking about indies, which is where I really care, I'd like to do Captain Paragon or Phase One Phasers. If I was to really go back, and possibly the Justice Machine. So
Yeah.
those would probably be the books I'd really, if I get my hands on them, those would be the ones I'd probably want to really do something with.
What about Elemental?
No, because I like Bill's run so much. Like I don't, because if I got it, I'd be running to Bill, be like, "Could you just finish it? Could you finish it?" That's what I would be doing if I had it. That's what I would do. I'm a big fan of it.
And and the answer to that question would be no, because he just posted that that he made it. He made Elementals public domain. So,
Oh right, well,
but of course, he really emphasized the fact that if he gets sued, that's
Right.
not on me, that's on you.
Yeah.
But that he's declaring it public domain.
that's very nice in a fantasy setting. It's still a dude who's very wealthy who owns it. I wouldn't advise it.
Yep.
That dude got money.
Yep.
He made. He's not paying attention, but he has money. That's fire. Don't stick your hand in it. Don't stick your hand in it. You're gonna get burnt. All right, gentlemen.
I would love to write the Justice Society for a couple of years, but I'd have to have a guarantee that I had a free hand in it, because I would really enjoy one of my favorite books back then was All Star Comics, when they went in and introduced Power Girl and Huntress and all of that, just classic stuff again. That's really overlooked by a lot of people.
Yeah.
That
you'll
was
have to-
incredibly well done.
You'll have to arm wrestle Jeff Johns for that.
Yeah, I realize that, but there's still so much potential in those older characters and revising them. That's one of the joys of Stargirl, is seeing what they're doing with those characters, and having enough removed because I haven't followed what the Justice Society's been doing since Stargirl came in to sit there and just really enjoy it.
Mhm.
You know, and not keep going. That's not what it was like in the books, you know, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's just fun.
All right. Cool. All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much. We made it to the 2-hour mark. We made it. All right. Now, before we go, of course, let's start with Luke. Luke, please let everybody know where they can find you at your work, sir.
Pretty simple. LukeStoneStudios.com. Just go to LukeStoneStudios.com. You're going to find all the pertinent links and social media things on there. And so I do invite you to also join my mailing list. I would appreciate that greatly.
All right. Cool. Mr. Raphael, where can they find you?
All right, you can find me at www.championcomicsgroup.com. You can also find me on facebook.com/Champion Comics Group. You can find news and information about the Team Supremacists and the Remarkables, and also my upcoming project, which is Winnie the Pooh in space. So I'm getting that kind of, since it hit public domain, I can actually use Winnie the Pooh now. So a buddy of mine and I are working on doing a Winnie the Pooh in space comic book for everybody,
Nice.
all ages.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so a quick question.
Wayne,
I heard this rumor about Winnie the Pooh, that Winnie the Pooh is actually a female. Is this true? Have you guys heard this?
He can be now.
You can do whatever you want with it.
Just don't put a red shirt on it. That's it.
Just no red shirt.
No red
What
shirt.
about green shirt? We can do green, right?
I'm pretty sure you
Oh,
can.
a hoodie on her.
You can do anything except for a red shirt. No Tigger. That doesn't kick in for another 2 years.
Yeah.
And essentially, if you follow the art that was done in the lithos for the original book, you're fine. Again, minus Tigger, which came out 2 years later. So that's why you got to wait 2 more years for Tigger.
Yeah.
Dwayne, where can they find you in your work, sir?
Yes, you can find me
go ahead.
at Animation Comics ENT.com, or you can also find us at Facebook and Instagram, Animation Comics ENT. Currently, as I said earlier, I have a Kickstarter available right now. Just search Salvation 0 and 1, and that'll take you to our Kickstarter.
All right. Cool. Randy, where can they find you, sir?
You can find me primarily on Facebook and on the Raging 2 broadcast network. I'm on Dispatches outside the box on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. I do and host the Zimcast on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m., starting at 9 p.m., and then also Sunday Funnies starting at 9 a.m. on Sundays. Other than that, primarily Facebook, a little bit of Twitter, but not very often, hardly ever. There's a link tree. You can look under Arrow Comics 4.0 for more of my stuff and other things that we have printed in the past. So that would be the primary ways to get a hold of me.
Cool. Mr. Lanning?
Yeah, always, of course, at the link tree. See Michael Lanning. You see it here. There. Yeah, look. Then, of course, on Dispatches is Zimcast on Wednesdays and Tuesdays and Wednesday nights. Check us out.
All right, cool. Well, I'm JD Calderon. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all under JD Calderon, and DeviantArt. And you can also find me under theoswaldchronicles.com and talltales.com. And folks, don't forget to back Dwayne's book. It's in the show notes. Don't forget to back Ego Raven. That's going to come out tomorrow. And the Oswald Chronicles next Monday. And the Long Shots currently on IGG. So thank you so much, folks. And we'll be talking to you all soon. Have a good night.
Night.
Thank you. Take care.
And I forgot to say, thank you all guys for showing up because all of you are fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.